All right, we are continuing with our spot illustration. And this is assignment 5. I am doing this feathered serpent. These were our videos so far. And so far we've set up our flat color, and then we set up duotone hard edge. So I'm going to walk you through those steps. So I organize digital coloring, which is coloring with raster colors behind vector line art, like it's a stained glass window. If I turn off the lines, you can see them there. The black bread is on top. That's the vector line art. It's a smart object. That means it's infinitely scalable, and we lock it so we don't accidentally rasterize it or ever paint on it or erase it or change it, right? Underneath that, that's the top piece of bread on the sandwich. We have at the bottom of the sandwich a blank white piece of bread, like Wonder Bread. But white can make all of your colors look really dark, just because it's so contrasted. So I also add a few different types of bread on the bottom. A piece of gray bread, a piece of black bread, so I can always check how my colors look with those different backgrounds. Remember, a spot illustration is fully floating. It does not fill a rectangle. And sometimes you'll have it on a poster that has a dark background, or a t-shirt that has a dark background, sometimes a bright background. You want to make sure it works well on all. So middle gray is kind of the best middle ground I've found for choosing your colors. And this first step is a big step. It is choosing your flat fill colors. And this was inspired by color references and then making little changes and modifications. But I always recommend using color references and then stealing the colors from them and then modifying them from there, instead of simply trying to just pick them all from a color selector like this of millions of colors. It's really hard to know what goes well together until you see it demonstrated. Okay, the next step, because this was flat color, right? That's how we start. And if you look at the assignment, let's get to that. Assignment 5, where we're going to be posting. It is due by 11:59 tonight. You need to have something turned in for assignment 5. You see my little handout. So far, we've gone through this whole first column. Flat color is the first stage, then duotone hard edge color. So let's look at how that's set up. So like a sandwich, you don't pull off the cheese when you want to add a tomato, right? You stack them on top of each other. So we are going to stack our flat color, which is my cheese layer. We're going to duplicate it and get an additional layer. Now this layer are the shadows. So how do I make my duotone shadows? It's actually really simple. I just duplicate my flat color, and then I go up to image adjustments. Right now they're grayed out because I have the layer locked, and I use levels to move the midtones darker. That way you are literally taking your flat local color and you're just shifting it into a darker lighting. You're not changing the color, you're changing the value of the color. Basically adding dark gray to it. And that gives you your shadow tones. Then I do the same thing by duplicating my flat colors, and I move my levels to the other side. So it brightens my flat colors. So it adds light to them, adds like a light gray to them. And I get my highlight tones. So if I don't use my shadow tones, this is what it looks like in duotone. And that's with my local flat color being the shadow color. But what most effective duotone color is darker shadows than your flat color and lighter highlights than your flat color. And then, when you want to, and I did it in a few places, like in this eye, I actually really like how it works. I then erased from the shadows to get the flat color just to come out in that little spot, right? And that gives you kind of a step between highlights and shadows in your duotone for surfaces that are particularly reflective. So I did that in the eye here, and I did it in the crown. So this is still duotone hard edge, but it's more than two tones, right? Because it's using the flat colors coming through with the shadow color and the highlight color. But they are all just level adjustments of the same color, right? So we're not changing the color frequency, which is what we call the hue. We're changing its amplitude. We're changing its intensity, its value. Okay. So that's how I got to this, my duotone color. And this is it without the line art. And then when we put the line art on it, it looks pretty clean. It should look better than it looked with flat color, right? To have those flats split into lights and darks. And you can test if it looks good on the different backgrounds. On black, yeah, it reads pretty intensely. This is inspired by Art Deco design, right? A modernist art style. So it's very kind of angular, very geometric. And it looks good on all the backgrounds. Now, before I move on to the next steps, which you'll see in the assignment, this is all kind of optional from here on. We can change those hard edge colors to soft edge. And then we can play with full spectrum. And then we can do more and more and more. We can do so much. But we are always going to add to the sandwich instead of changing the layers. So we lock the layers as we go. So the first thing I wanted to try was to combine all of my duotone layers, the shadows, the highlights, and the flat color, into one layer. And this is how you can do it. Turn off all your other visible layers, so you just have your combined colors showing. Click on the topmost visible version of that, hold down Option, and say Layer Merge Visible. And what that gives you is a combined layer, where everything is now in one place. Why that is very useful at this stage is so that you can mess with it all in one place. So just like we did adjustments to shift our flat colors lighter and darker, now we have all those colors in one combined place, and I can go do full image adjustments. Start with levels. And if it looks a little bright to me, I can dim them all, or if it looks a little dark to me, I can brighten them all. But what I want to be careful of is, remember I told you never to use pure white, right? So I never want these kind of cream colors to go to solid white. Otherwise I'm losing some color variation. But if I just keep it to the mid-tone slider, I should be pretty safe that way. So I might brighten it a little bit, but it still has the variation of the three tones. I also have that in the wing with the local colors showing through, but now it's on a combined layer. Okay, that's just lights and darks. That's just levels. The one I find really useful at this stage is the color balance, right? Because now we can shift, all the colors are in one place together, and we can shift their midtones to be more green or more blue or more pink. And now they all work together. It's kind of glazing all of your color at once. And I can work with the highlights. And I can work with the shadows. Just like we did with other people's pixels in our compositing projects, now we're using these direct adjustments to optimize our own work, right? So now I can compare it. This is with color balance, and that's without color balance. And you see how this is just a little bit more, everything's kind of flowing together, at least in my opinion, right? Then the next stage is hue saturation. Remember, whenever we do direct adjustments, I want you to do levels, color balance, and then hue saturation. Hue saturation is for big shifts, because sometimes it will show you things that you really like, and you can always do it on a duplicate. But it's not like I'm going to push it all the way to this end, because then I lose a lot of my coloring choices, or push it all the way. This is just nudging the spectrum one way or the other. And I think it definitely looks better towards that way. And then you can play with the saturation, the intensity of the color. How intense do you want it? And you can even specify, we haven't done this much, but you can even specify. So if I want to play with just the yellows, because they're just not sitting right for me, I can play with the hue of just the yellow. And then just shift them a little bit, maybe desaturate them, maybe brighten them a little. So that those yellows look a little different in the balance. Let's intensify them a tiny bit. And then I can go to just the reds, and I can play with their saturation, separate from the others. And even their hue, if I want them to go more pink, if I want them to go more purple or more orange. Right? And then I can look at just the cyans. I can shift its hues, which affects everything that that cyan color connects to. Actually, I kind of liked it where it was, but maybe I'll darken them a little bit. Okay, so now that's even more different than what it was like before. Now this just gives you full control, using digital coloring to its utmost advantage, right? Because digital can give us multiple perfect copies. So this is what I came up with and I liked for today. I did this at the end of last class on my combined layer, and I came up with this, right? So how did I get to this? Let's take it to 100%. Is I really pushed things more towards magenta. And now, with time, that feels like too pink to me. So what do I like better, that or this? And I like this one better. And do I still like it better than that? And yes, I do, right? So now what can I do with that? I'm going to label it my combined layer, my combined duotone. And this is what's called hard edge duotone. And if I wanted to finish off my illustration at this point, I would recommend not just using flat pixels. And I always find this when I'm coloring, little blips in my digital inking. And the beauty is I could fix that in my vector if I wanted to and then bring it back in. But right now we're just worried about the color. And instead of just these being flat, what I can do is I can layer one on top of the other by going to dissolve and giving it a texture. See, letting them come through, and it gives you this kind of construction colored paper effect, which I really like, that complements black line art really well. So that is with dissolve. And then I can even layer up the two of them. So I have this on dissolve, the one that has more pinks. And I can take that really low with dissolve. And I can take this one a little bit higher with dissolve. And now you see that there's slight color variation within each flat color, which actually helps it to print really, really nicely because it's engaging more inks to get the color. It looks really grainy right here. That's a moire effect. It's not actually like that because dissolve does individual pixels. So it's going to print very, very nicely, like kind of a grainy color. So now I've done my duotone and I've finished it off. But what if I want to push it more than just duotone hard edge? Well, that's where the combined layer also helps. So I'm going to take my combined layer that's here. I'm going to set it to 100% normal mode. And I'm going to move this now on top. And I'm going to make this green because this is what I'm now going to work with. Okay? So that is my finish for hard edge duotone. if I wanted that to be my finished color.